The UK will be rolling out COVID-19 booster shots in September.
Yep.
So they're going to be having, and there was a story in NBC that really freaked me out. And I know you guys, you don't want to hear me say it, but I have to say it again. There's a story from NBC that said mix and match. And it said some experts were advocating for taking multiple different kinds. And I'm just like, stop, no.
Experts?
NBC.
Which experts? I hate when they say experts. What are they talking about?
It was like, it was an NBC article. I got to pull this one up. I got to find this one. But that's why I'm just like, I'm pretty sure if you go to your doctor and you ask them, they're going to be like, no, don't do that. Let me see if I can find the story, because we have the one about UK is going to be introducing boosters.
I want to know what benefit there would come from mixing and matching them. Do you see any kind of benefit,
Yep.
Chris?
Not I can think of off the top of my head. So not really.
Just to bring it up, this is NBC News. Mix and match COVID vaccine approach boosts immune response, study finds. Now, I will state, as far as I can tell, the FDA is not approved of that practice. Okay, there you go.
Yeah,
But consult your doctor.
Yeah.
Well,
some European countries have started offering alternatives to AstraZeneca, and a second shot after the vaccine was linked to rare blood clots. So this is NBC News, and it's a story by Reuters. Here's the best part: there's no byline. There's no byline. This is a major taboo in journalism. We're launching the newsroom for Timcast.com.
Good eye on that one.
And I'm very much always like, we must have bylines and bios for all of our reporters. People need to know who wrote it, and then be able to email that person with corrections and our corrections department. And we're going to have fact checkers. When it just says by Reuters, like source Reuters, okay, I suppose I can maybe take. Let me see if I can dig deeper. We'll do this in real time. Let's see if I can take mix and match COVID, search that, and Reuters. And there we go. All right. And now, okay, so we do have a name. We find the name now. Alistair Smout. Mix and match approach boosts immune response of AstraZeneca shot, study finds. When NBC News doesn't put a byline on it, makes you wonder, like, we don't know who wrote this or why. The Guardian does this a lot. Staff. That's not a credible source when they do that. For all you know, it's written by a robot. And it's true. They have robots who write news stories. There was something I've talked about before. It's called Natural Sciences. Have you ever heard of this? They have automatic news articles that publish. So what they'll do is they'll have specific parameters like temperature, forecast for weather. And then an article will automatically be generated saying the 5-day forecast for, Tallahassee, Florida is today will be Sunday. By tomorrow, you can expect to see clouds. Completely automatically generated. They do the same thing with sporting events, MMA and football or whatever. It'll be like, the Raiders scored a goal in this quarter and that quarter and did this, and they'll show you all the stats, written by a robot. You got to watch out for those things.
Well, you do, and it was the Snowden leaks back in 2013, which showed that the GCHQ had bots that were so good at writing comments under all the major newspapers that people couldn't detect what was what. So that's been a thing for a long time. Trust me, things have gotten a lot better since 2013.
I'll see stuff in the live chat sometimes where it will be two comments back to back that will say different things in all caps about, for instance, me. It'll be like, Ian's the best, Ian's the worst, but it'll be they'll come at the exact same time. Two different accounts, all caps, and it's like very weird that those could be two people.
One of the reasons I tweeted before, stop responding to people who don't use real names and photos and see your political discourse improve. One of the reasons I tweeted that, it was a subtweet. I was tweeting about, certain trolls. But one of the main issues is that we've long known that governments use what's called sock puppets. They use, one person will have 50 accounts, and they'll bombard you with an opinion to make you think it is public opinion. People fall for this like crazy.
Sure.
You'll get a small pizza restaurant will announce they're having a, like the Proud Boys are going to have a meeting at some restaurant. The restaurant owner has no idea. And then one day the restaurant owner gets 40, emails or whatever. And they're all from different people and different names saying, why are you hosting white supremacists and Nazis? And they'll be like, whoa, what are all these things? It's probably one person doing it. That's why it's like, I want to know who I'm talking to. And within reason, I still will engage in conversations with people who don't use, names or photos or anything like that. Sometimes people want to be anonymous for an obvious reason. We talked about this. But I'm just pointing that out, that if we're in the space where we're like, we're not going to stand by our names and have these conversations, then you have a massive exploit in your face from activist groups. And I'll tell you one thing, conservatives are not engaging in this. I'm sure some are, but they are not as politically savvy and organized as the mainstream left is and the intelligence agencies. So when it comes to engaging with sock puppets, it is probably 2 to 1 that you're engaging with a leftist sock puppet who's lying to you than you would be as someone on the right. But it exists on both sides.
Well, we know information is power, and so of course this power has not been left to its own devices, and this goes way beyond citizens. I remember there was this really embarrassing moment. I think Reddit, when it was first coming out and it's really starting to explode. I can't remember the year. I'd have to look it up. 2013 to 15, somewhere in there. And they said, "Hey, where's our traffic coming from?" I think it was on like Our Data is Beautiful. So they looked at the IP accounts, and oh my gosh, wouldn't you know there's this one little town in North Carolina that like blew everybody else out of the water, and that's where Fort Hood's located, and they have an operational center for information control, right? And then I think they VPN'd it and got rid of that little like data signal, but it was pretty obvious to me what was happening then, right? So information is actually power. So when you see comments, you have to know, first question ought to be, is this real? Because it might be, it might not be, we don't know. We just don't know. But information is power.
Yeah. Which is why when you saw the New York mayoral election thing happen, Eric Adams is like, yo, what's with all these extra votes?
Yeah, hey.
All these liberal journalists come out saying, you're Trumpian, you're lying, this is ridiculous, you're a sore loser, even though he was winning.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that the election board was like, oh, actually, yeah, he was right. Sorry about that. But you see the immediate reaction from the establishment is protect the machine at all costs.
Right.
Don't challenge, don't question, don't investigate. When I went to do the Sweden investigation, Donald Trump goes, he's at a rally, and he goes, "Did you see what happened last night in Sweden? It's terrible." And then the media explodes like, "What happened last night in Sweden, Trump? What are you talking?" He was talking about a documentary he watched on Fox News last night. And so he didn't speak as clearly enough. I did a GoFundMe. I'm like, hey, I'm going to raise money to go to Sweden and actually investigate, because I'd worked for Vice, I'd worked for Disney, and I had done these kinds of on-the-ground documentary investigations. And I had journalists I knew from Vice message me saying, do not go. And I was confused. I was like, what do you mean? I was like, one of the guys I went to Ukraine with. And I'm like, we went to Ukraine together to investigate stuff. Like, why wouldn't I go to Sweden? And he goes, just don't do it. Give the money away. Give it to a charity. And I was like, I raised money to go to report journalism. It would be fraudulent if I gave it away. I have to refund it. And then I got another message from someone saying, don't fuel their conspiracies. And I was like, do you think the conspiracies are true? Because if I actually go, I'm assuming I'm going to prove them wrong. And they're like, no, don't go. Creepy. People I knew and worked with, all of a sudden were just like, do not challenge the machine.
And that was just about the machine.
It was weird.
What do you think that was really about?
I have no idea. It's a cult, man. And I say cult a lot, and people are like, Tim saying cult again. When people I worked with at Vice, who are low-level reporters, and they get paid trash, we fly around reporting stories one day, just instinctively defend the machine. No one told them to message me. Mm-hmm. There's no handler, like they're not secretly part of some government agency. They were just so indoctrinated. They were like, don't you dare report on any of this because we said no. And I'm like, I'm genuinely confused by what you're talking about. And I went. Mm-hmm. And then Slate, these lefties, loved that I came back saying like, yeah, there's not really that much crime. It's like, so there are problems here. Crime is going up, but relative to most places. Mm-hmm. And the problems of Sweden were very, very nuanced. It wasn't like a bunch of immigrants came in a year ago and then caused problems. There's actually the children of immigrants from 20 years ago. There's a lot of nuance there. And Sweden really screwed things up. But I was just, to experience, that whole thing was a very strange experience. From having people I knew and worked with saying, do not report, don't do journalism. And I'm like, but I always do journalism. It was like brain slugs infected their bodies and took them over. It was the weirdest thing. And then going to Sweden, experiencing the message control when all of the media aligned against me after we got into this conflict in an area called Rinkeby, it was weird to see how coordinated the machine was. Mm-hmm. Creepy.
Now, has it always been like that, or do you think it's getting worse?
I think it's getting worse.
And what could explain that? So back to this idea of leaders and followers. I have this theory that things are getting so tense for people, right? So young people in particular. I've just had this event. This really nice young kid comes up. He's in teens. He's in college. And he's like, thanks for what you do. I have a question. Like, what would you do if you're me? He's like, I'm studying, but I don't believe in the future at all. And he's coming up with like this existential dread, which is, I'm supposed to live into this story. Here's my story. Go to school, get good grades, come out, get a job. You do it. You're supposed to plan on all this stuff. Meanwhile, What's your school telling you? Oh, hey, the ice caps are melting and this whole thing's about to go up in flames. It's hard to sort of square that circle. And so I think confronted with that, people start to cling to anything, including maybe, obedience to the machine or something. I think it's a big defense.
For sure. It's part of why information is so powerful, like what you said earlier, because if you can give them a path or a reason to live or a solution or at least an idea of a solution, like, iron fertilization. We can repopulate the salmon. Have you studied iron fertilization?
Yeah, they're going to get the carbon out of
you can
the
regrow
algae blooms or whatever.
The coral reefs, it also feeds the salmon. The iron creates plankton, which then the salmon can eat, and so we can regrow the fish population of Earth. We can regrow the coral by shattering it and placing it all over, and then it all grows together and forms giant reefs. Like, there are solutions. If people don't know, they get scared, and then they want a leader, and they look to people like Anthony Fauci, who like the TV leaders that pop up, reality TV stars, actors,
I feel like people don't want to have any responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
They just want to be told what to do.
I don't know. If I know what to do, I like it. I like the responsibility.
Klein said it, bro. You don't even got to do anything. The CDC just says do it, and you just do it. Like, okay, well, look. Within reason, I do respect CDC guidance. I say within reason because, I don't know, Tuskegee, for instance. But you have personal responsibility. Yes, they can give you advice, but ultimately it's on you to go and seek out what's right for you, which includes talking to your doctor.
Or perhaps becoming a doctor.
So
that's true.
The bright spot that came for me out of all this COVID stuff was really looking into things like certain supplements and whatnot and realized that I had bought into a bunch of junk that my culture had given me, including my doctor, literally telling me vitamins are just an expensive way to take a leak, right? You eat them and you piss them out, right? Mm-hmm. But in
water
fact,
soluble.
Vitamin D, I have this whole crazy story on how important vitamin D is, and it's an amazing story.
And Fauci said so.
Well, only because Jennifer Garner asked him on her vlog, and he was starstruck, so he did admit to taking vitamin D, but he never came out and said, you should.
I thought he did. I thought he said vitamin D is good and people should be...
It's still on the NIH treatment guidelines right now. Under COVID, it says there's neither enough data to refute or endorse vitamin D. But there's tons of data. Tons of data.
You know what I found? I like winters are like I feel... I don't like winters. Right. I like the cold. Mm-hmm. And then this past year, I started wondering, like, why am I like so energized and energetic and jumpy and like full of, just ready to go? Why do I skate better in the summers? And in the winter, even indoor, it's harder. And I'm like, dude, it's vitamin D.
Vitamin D.
I'm not getting enough sunlight. I'm inside. It's heated, and there's less sunlight. So I got some vitamin D gummies, and I felt fantastic.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not getting enough sun,
The more
man.
you study vitamin D, it's not a vitamin. It's a hormone. It's like involved in all these things, and it's about inflammation and bone repair. It's like crazy good stuff. And almost everybody is deficient in it, particularly dark-skinned people, because the melanin in your skin, particularly at higher latitudes, prevents the sun from coming in, the UVB rays, and making the vitamin D. So, like, if you or I took our shirt off, and we'd get like 10,000 units in like 15 minutes, right? But
of course, consult your doctor before taking any vitamin or supplement.
Or taking your shirt off.
Yes.
Is there a difference in the value biochemically of producing vitamin D naturally from sunlight or taking a vitamin D supplement?
There probably is. Well, so the vitamin D from sunlight has its own regulation process where you can't get too much. It'll shut itself down. If you could technically take too much, but it's a big number.
Wow.
Right?
It's a
really big number.
It's a fat soluble. No, it's a hormone. Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's fat soluble too.
Fat soluble.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
the water soluble stuff you just kind of piss out, but the
Right.
fat soluble stuff you can get really sick on, right? Like vitamin A.
That's a different story. But
Yeah.
vitamin D takes a lot. Like you would have to take at my weight for myself, it would be a huge number.
I was reading about like general health and dieting a long time ago, and I read that we don't get enough vitamin C in our diets.
Mm-hmm.
It was something like for every 50 pounds an animal weighs, they produce something like 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C or something like that. I don't know the exact numbers. Maybe you know.
It's true. So we're one of only 3 mammals that can't make vitamin C. We had some weird mutation that bollocks this up for us a long time ago. Every other animal does it, particularly when they get stressed. So a goat that's like breaks its leg or something, they've done the studies, will manufacture 60 grams of vitamin C in the next 24 hours.
Oh, that's a lot.
That's a huge amount.
Yeah.
And by the way, you can't take that much because you can't tolerate it through your GI tract. So that's why they do high dose vitamin C now when somebody's coming in with like full-blown sepsis, multi-organ shutdown, they pump the vitamin C in there, and it's amazing how it recovers them.
What does vitamin C do? Like, is there a process by which it's converted into hydrogen peroxide or something like that?
No, it's the precursor for pretty much every stress hormone you're going to make.
Okay.
That's going to help you get through that stressful process, right? Cortisol, cortisone, things like that. It's also really important for collagen repair and things like that. So Linus Pauling, 2-time Nobel Prize winner. He's getting on in his years, and so, you know, sometimes old guys lose the story or plot line. That's what they tried to say about this guy. But late in his career, he's like, vitamin C is the bomb. He had all this data, 400,000 records from GIs, and noted that and this was all before computers, they had to hand track this. He noted over time that the people who had the higher vitamin C levels at check-in when they got their physicals had much lower levels of heart disease. So right around that same time, though, the drug companies like, oh, you see people have the plaques in their arteries, and we look in the plaques and we see cholesterol, so let's take cholesterol down. He was like, you got it all wrong, Bucky. That's not what's happening. That cholesterol's there to try and repair the damage. The damage is happening
Vitamin
before.
C.
And it's because we don't have vitamin C. So he comes up and he puts vitamin C in, and all of a sudden they're showing that they're clearing up people's atherosclerosis within months if they have adequate
And it's
levels
the
of vitamin C.
cholesterol that's doing it with the help of the vitamin C.
And the cholesterol is there to help repair the damage that's already happening.
But you
right?
could be wrong.
I could be wrong, and you should
talk
consult
to-
your doctor.
That's right.
No, but it's guinea pigs. They don't make vitamin C, right?
I'm not sure about that one. There's some bat, and I forget what the other one is.
I think it's
Whoa.
guinea pigs. I could be
Wow.
wrong.
Why?
I think don't pigeons not make vitamin C either?
Not sure about pigeons.
I was reading
know
some book
this,
a long
Tim.
time ago. I read his book
I
about
don't
it a
know
long time
about
ago.
Is there any
It was-
explanation as to
It,
why?
it was saying that the and again I'm not an expert in this. It was like 10 years ago I read this thing. It said that the amount we're told is our daily 100% is the minimum to avoid scurvy,
Okay.
and that if you look at, like you said, 60 grams the
Yeah.
goat.
Yep.
Yeah. So what do we take, like 60 milligrams?
You might take
Like
600.
600?
500 or 1,000 milligrams or something like that. But again, it depends how much can actually be absorbed at that time. So our gut really limits that. So if you get in real serious situation, good doctors now will give you that right IV because you can put a lot in through
Wow.
IV. You can really cram it.
Good doctors with good opinions, good medical advice.
Well, I'll tell you. So I work with these doctors who are figuring all this stuff out, and they've got this great story around vitamin C, which sounds a lot like all these other stories we've been talking about, right? Where there's a whole medical establishment that really hates the idea, and they try and poo-poo it, and they design studies to fail. And these guys are just like, look, when somebody comes into an ICU with multi-organ failure for sepsis, right? They can take the average death rate from around 50% and knock it down to about 8%, and they can do it reliably and repeatably. And if I end up in the ICU, I want these guys treating me. Period.
and they're doing intravenous like vitamin C.
That's the first thing they do. Like even before they take your first vital sign, they get that drip going, right? So then some other doctors say, well, let's study that. And so they design it so that they administer it within 24 hours of showing up. And these guys are like, no, every minute counts. They can prove that. Every minute counts. And so these guys set up these studies and start it within a day. And of course, it has a much lower efficacy after that. So what do we say about a system where people are incentivized to design a trial to fail? What if that was you or your dad or your mom or somebody you loved that got enrolled in that? I mean, how do we roll with that information?
It bothers me.
I've never I don't think they're gonna let you die, man. You know what I mean? I think sometimes people make bad calls. Sometimes a doctor will use his best judgment, but I don't think there's anybody like twirling their mustache. Maybe at big pharma for sure, but like doctors and hospitals.
Belief systems are powerful enough that people do crazy things when their belief system is challenged.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this the other day that another book I read a long time ago that around 24 or so is when people's brains start becoming like fully matured, sort of solidifying their worldview.
Mine was around 40, but keep going.
Nice.
Well, but they say that midlife crisis happens when the brain reopens to become.
Oh, that's what happened to me.
So the idea is that if you've survived that long, your brain is telling you the things you've learned have kept you alive. Hold on to them, because if we maintain this, we can survive longer. So what happens then is, if you present evidence that is undeniable to somebody whose worldview is solidified, maybe somebody who's 30, their brain will start panicking because they're like, no, we can't accept this. It puts us at risk. And so their brain switches to anger mode. And then they shut down the logical process centers and go right into, how dare you? Yeah, and they start ad hominem and they just go nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure people have experienced this. Have an argument with somebody, and then they just snap, and you're like, why are you so mad? Whoa.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's how you know you've touched into a belief system. So if you have an opinion, right, you say, oh, I think this is the best baseball pitcher. Here's my stats. And I come up with different stats, and we trade stats for a while. It's all cool. But if you have an opinion about something, that's fine. If you have a belief system, it's the emotions.
Yeah,
That's when you detect
that was in Dogma. Chris Rock says that. He says something like that. He's like, an idea can change, but beliefs, those are harder to change, and people die for beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a lot of ideas. The joke is someone once commented on a YouTube video saying Tim Pool's a milquetoast fence sitter, and I'm like, hey, let's roll with that one, and I used it. It's technically not true because I get really angry about freedom, free speech, civil rights, and things like that. But for a lot of things, like, I got some ideas, but I don't think if I'm not an expert on cancer, I'm not going to tell people what to do with cancer. I have no idea. It
was making me think about the scientific community and how theories and hypotheses are battled amongst like in quantized inertia, for instance, is a new theory by Mike McCulloch. He's been working on it, and there's just a lot of pushback because it does away with dark matter in his theory. So the people that have theorized dark matter don't want their theories to be lost and upended because then their creds are diminished. And
so actually, there's somebody I know very, very well, but I'll let them retain their privacy, whose father was a physicist, and I was asking about string theory and M theory. And he explained that there's a big problem right now with, at the time, this was 10 years ago, so I don't know a lot about physics. He was explaining there's actually a lot of problems they can't figure out when it comes to string theory and M theory that have many people believing it's probably not correct. But the problem is nobody wants to give up their life's work. They spent 40 years working on these theories and the math, and you want to come and tell them now it's all wrong? They can't accept that.
It's very hard to do. I believe it was the physicist Niels Bohr who said science advances one funeral at a time.
That's wild.
So brutal.
But it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. And so when it comes to this whole area of this medical stuff we've been talking about, it's really important to understand that if somebody's belief system is in the way of you and your health, you need to detect that. And then find somebody whose belief system maybe is more flexible.
That's why there's a lot of people who are who have messaged me saying, my doctor didn't know. And I'm like, bro, there's other doctors out there.
Yeah.
A second opinion is like a normal thing.
Didn't know is okay. Doesn't want to know is not okay, right? I've had a lot of people message me say, my doctor, I gave them the data. I'm giving them papers. And they're like, don't give me that stuff. I'm not interested, right? I say, find a different doctor.
Absolutely.
That's what you do then, right?
We had... we were talking with somebody, I can't remember, but they mentioned that they had a doctor who told them gave them some political response to their question, and so they said and they called a different doctor and said, I don't care for the politics, just tell me here's my age, here's my family. And then the doctor's like, here's what we're going to do, here's what makes sense based on the criteria, not the politics. There's
a whole article that just came out about doctors who've banded together who are so scared of the wokeness that these are typically older doctors, they've been in practice a decade or more. Men and women doctors, and what they're afraid of is that they see these younger doctors coming in who won't treat because somebody has the wrong ideology, right? That I think that person's a skinhead or they're Republican or a Proud Boy. Yeah, I won't treat them, or they won't give them the same quality of treatment, but they're open about it. And so this is really terrifying, right? To get to that level, because now we're into the us versus them. Now you've started to dehumanize, and that's when you're getting pretty far down the path. So
Yeah,
definitely.
So just a quick aside on this. I was speaking at this conference. This really sharp guy comes up afterwards, takes me to the side, asks, he said, this guy had worked for several Joint Chiefs of Staff and was pretty connected in, and said, by the way, when you were talking, Chris, about that we were going to attack North Korea, this was 5 years ago, I was reading all these signs, and I knew we were about to do that because I suddenly saw all these articles come out in the New York Times about how prison guards in North Korea were kicking puppies and doing stuff. We were dehumanizing. So I watched the dehumanization happen. And so I wrote out to my followers. I'm like, hey, looks like things are about to heat up with North Korea. This guy came up just a couple of years after the fact and said, you have no idea how right you were. We had 2 carrier groups in that moment, and they were all spooled up, and we were ready to go. How did you know? And I said, it was easy. New York Times was printing stuff about how inhumane the guards were in the prisons over there. You never see, and it came out in 4 newspapers at once.
They need to rally public support.
Right.
Well, let's talk about this.
Dehumanize first. That's what you do.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.